No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Hey guys, Harrison101 back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to episode 9 of the Online Racer, Formula 1 2012 online gameplay featuring real-life topics in Formula 1 worth talking about. Of course, the Formula 1 season is over, and there's a bunch of special videos about that coming soon, and apologies for taking a couple of days off. I was really busy. I was actually in Brussels yesterday to visit the European Parliament building. I just came back last night, but I felt like making a video again anyway, because something's really kind of got my goat, so to speak. And we F1 fans, I think, are starting to slowly turn into wrestling fans, where it's like, oh, we got to push all these young stars. And then when a young guy actually gets an opportunity, it's like, no, not that one. Get somebody else in. Get the one I like. For those that don't know the situation, it was confirmed about 2 hours before I record this video that Pastor Maldonado has been confirmed as getting the second Lotus seat. So he'll be partnering Romain Grosjean next year at Lotus. And I think a lot of Formula 1 fans got mad about this. A lot of them, I think, were Nico Hülkenberg fans. And a lot of them were just people, you know, I think, in my opinion, being a bit short-sighted when it comes to Pastor Maldonado. I mean, we're talking about a GP2 world champion here in Pastor Maldonado, and people automatically want to assume he's a crap driver because he had a few crashes in his rookie year. Like, that's never happened to any other driver in the history of Formula 1. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it's not as simple as just being the best guy anymore. And, you know, people want to get mad saying, like, you know, oh, it's, you know, it's Formula 1, it's all about the talent, you know, it's all about the money and not the talent, boo-hoo, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. But Formula 1 is a business. It's a business first, you know. Don't ever lose sight of that. And once you put that into the front of your mind, you'll realise this is not a bad deal at all. I think it's actually quite a good addition to that Lotus team for Pastor Maldonado to join it. And I'll explain why. I mean, okay, before I start, I know people pointed this out the last time I talked about Hülkenberg and Maldonado. I'm not trying to convince you that Maldonado was the right choice. Because in a perfect world, I think Nico Hülkenberg would and probably should have gotten that seat. But ask yourself this question. Given Lotus's current financial problems, the fact that the Quotum Motorsports deal probably isn't going to go through, because the guy that runs Quotum is a con man, do your homework on this one, it's true. And like I said, in a perfect world, Hülkenberg would get that seat over Maldonado. But Formula 1 is not perfect. Anyone that's a decent fan of Formula 1 already knows this. So allow me to explain. Like I said, if Maldonado was not that talented, he would never have been a GP2 world champion in 2010. That's the first thing. The guy clearly has talent. Last year he won a Grand Prix for Williams and often showed very good qualifying pace. Would often get into Q3. And like I said, would have scored more points. He could have even had a podium in Singapore if it wasn't for his car's, you know, I think he had a hydraulics failure that race. Number 2, the Williams car that was on this year's grid was probably the worst Williams has ever designed a car for Formula 1 this year. It was their statistically, it was their joint worst season ever. They only scored 5 points. I think that was equal to their 2011 haul, and as a whole was the worst they've ever had in terms of their since they were in Formula 1. That was back in the 60s. It was an awful, awful car. Bottas, yeah, showed some talent towards it. Showed some talent towards the end of the season. I mean, the 8th place in America was a fantastic drive. But let's not act like this year wasn't awful for Williams. What could Maldonado show in the worst midfield car in the field, and probably pound for pound the worst team in Formula 1, considering we expected Caterham and Mauritia to be right at the back. Nobody expected Williams to be that far down. If anything, given how 2012 actually showed some promise for them, they could build on that and get a car that could get higher up the midfield end this year. Williams were dreadful this year in the grand scheme of things. What could Maldonado do? Don't get me wrong, he kind of shot himself in the foot with the whole, oh, I think the team screwed me on purpose comments from last year. But what did it matter? He was getting the Lotus seat anyway. On top of that, Lotus is the perfect team when it comes to guys that deal with temperament. Look at the last two drivers Lotus have had in their team. Kimi Raikkonen, who has always been difficult to deal with in Formula 1 in terms of being that guy on the radio, and he has the whole ideal F1 attitude when it comes to renegades anyway. Raikkonen is the picture renegade guy in Formula 1, and Lotus dealt with him just fine. If anything, Lotus made Kimi Raikkonen fall in love with Formula 1 again and brought him back out of what was probably going to be an obscure retirement. And Romain Grosjean, who only last year people were saying should take his super license away and get rid of him because he was a terrible driver because he had all those first lap crashes. 1 year later, he's one of the biggest and brightest rising stars this sport has got. Scored 75 points the last 6 races of the year. Seemed to be the only guy that could give Sebastian Vettel a fair shout in terms of just showing pace and showing some promise for, you know, a team that has severe money issues. And that's what we're coming down to here in Formula 1. It's a business first and not a sport. The sooner people understand that, the better. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that Pastor was the ideal #1 choice, but Lotus needed the money. This is the same Lotus that I know a lot of people love within the Formula 1 community for being happy-go-lucky, for being quite a jokey team, but this is also the team that is, one, recovering from a Crashgate scandal, remember 2008, and 2, didn't pay any of Kimi Raikkonen's £15 million salary this season. But now they want to bring in Hulkenberg, a guy that doesn't bring in any funding at all, and expect Lotus to get on with it like nothing's happened. Guys, if Lotus signed Nico Hulkenberg, that team would die. Hulkenberg is another guy that didn't even get paid at all this season through the first half of the year, because that's why he cancelled his contract after Germany with the Sauber team that also couldn't afford to pay him. It's an epidemic across the board where the midfield teams are struggling for cash and they need help. So why not sign the guy with 29 million euros of funding available to him? It's a fact. Maldonado is not worth the $30 million euro downfall you get from bringing in Hulkenberg. I don't think Maldonado's that much worse, quite frankly. I think Maldonado is a talented guy who, if he can rein in his temperament a little bit, I think he can do great things with that team and match Grosjean in terms of pace. Not to mention, on top of that, like I said, Lotus are a team that can deal with temperament before. They've done that before. There's no reason why they couldn't do it again. If anything, Lotus is actually probably the best fit available for a guy like Maldonado, a guy that has talent, just hasn't had the real opportunity to show it yet. I think most of the people that are mad are either Hulkenberg fans or just guys that are being short-sighted. Because, you know, they saw last season, they saw all the crashes and they thought he must be terrible. And you know what? That's simply not the case. I mean, I could even apply that theory to guys like Esteban Gutierrez that looked terrible at the start of the year, but by the end actually looked like he was quite solid and showed, I think, great improvement as a rookie driver towards the end of the year, wheeling in that temperament a little bit, showed some pace, got into Q3, scored points in Japan. There's another guy that just showed, in my opinion, just good overall progress. And that's why I think Maldonado is a decent fit for the Lotus team. I didn't say, like I said, I never said he was the best fit available. Like I said, in a perfect world, I think Nico Hulkenberg would and probably should have gotten the nod. But Formula 1 is a business first, not a sport. We as fans need to stop acting like we're entitled to something. Maldonado will be fine, he'll be a good fit. And like I said, this keeps the Lotus team afloat for the short term. Shouldn't that be, as a business, the #1 priority? I studied business for 5 years. The first thing I was told, the first aim of any business is to survive. And that's exactly what they're doing by doing this. Like, that's why Sauber are probably going to bring in Sergei Sorokin next year. Because they need the money. Like, I've always said it. And this is what one of my friends told me when I initially got mad about Sauber putting in an unproven 18-year-old in Sergei Sorokin to take their seat for next year. The response I was given was, would you rather have no Sauber team at all? And the same thing applies here, because I know a lot of fans would be upset if there was no Lotus on the grid for 2014, because Lotus is one of the most likeable teams in the paddock. They have a really nice unit, they have really likeable drivers, they're very funny on social media. I like the fact they don't take themselves so seriously, but if we are being serious, as a business they need to survive, and I think bringing in Pastor Maldonado, and sorry for the WWE pun, is what I think is best for business. Let me know what you guys think below. In the meantime, I've been Harrison101, and I'll catch you guys later. Sayonara.